This is Co-op HD1 HD3 Hornsby, radio for people, not for profit. Welcome to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Each week, we explore how your library is more than books. The library is knowledge, technology, and inspiration for our community. Hello and welcome. Today, we are going to have a very special show. We are actually going to air some Challenger Street newspaper writers. We tried to air this a few weeks back, and there were some technical difficulties. We have now fixed everything, and we are ready. So the Challenger Street newspaper, as you will hear, is it is a newspaper. It's called a street newspaper, and it's written by people experiencing homelessness and their allies. And these are their stories, and these stories do not necessarily represent Co-op Radio or the opinions of Co-op Radio or the opinions of the Austin Public Library. These represent the opinions of the writers themselves. So let's give a listen.
I'm Valerie, the director-editor of the Challenger Street newspaper. We started in 2011 as a job opportunity for people on the streets and people in poverty. We are the voice of the homeless, with 95% of our writers being homeless or formerly homeless. I'm the editor who doesn't edit. I have the writers edit their own work so I don't change their voice. I hope that you enjoy listening to our writers read their articles.
Hi, my name is Citizen Zero, and this is my poem, Fake City, from the November 2017 issue of the Challenger. And on page 4, you'll see a picture of Colin Kaepernick, and it's important to note that the mayor's daughter is named Sarah. So here's my poem, Fake City. Fake city, cruel city, corrupt city, segregated city, city of glass. One smooth stone will shatter you. I will throw it. As long as it is not your daughter, you allow it. As long as it is not your race, you ignore it. I don't agree to be sacrificed. I don't agree to give up my life, liberty, or my pursuit of happiness. I don't agree for you to take my home and my personal property and give it to another, to blacken my reputation, drag me to court, jail me, kill me, throw me in an unsafe, unsanitary cesspool where I'm invisible. You are not my voice. You are fake.
Good afternoon. This is Romero with the Challenger newspaper. I've been writing now for quite some time. Most of my work is based on emotional issues that people are either facing or they're going through something. So I like to hear about their stories and find some way to put that into my work and my writing. So this latest piece that, this latest column that I've written for the Challenger that did get published. So I'm really giving myself a thumbs up for that. So this is called Predicting Before It's Too Late. Okay, I was watching YouTube when I happened to come across a video in which a young woman committed suicide. She sadly hung herself from a tree. As I was greatly saddened at the horrific thought, I had to grasp a couple of deep breaths. Distraught, empty, and numb, I began reading more about her story. So it turned out that the young adolescent was crying out the whole entire time. All the signs were there. If only her dad or mom could have shared a lot more attention to their sweet, innocent daughter. Anyone should have easily seen the signs. If anyone had only asked certain questions in a certain way, she would still be alive today. I'm sure of it. It turns out that the young girl had been molested by a family member. We need to be more attentive to our own, even more so to those that we care very dearly about. I can't stress this enough, that family and friends need to be checked upon every day, every chance we get. Take the time to call, take the time to visit. Excuses are always easy to make, but a family member is more important than anything in the world. I'm truly dedicated in helping anyone in these type of emotional distress and crisis that they might be going through or facing in their life. I want to become, one day, maybe certified professionally so I can reach those in need. even if it means going out of my way, reaching out often to speak to someone. Even a simple hello or hi is a start. A mere stranger that may not be so strange after all. I hope this column makes an impact in a little sense to someone and gets us thinking differently about others. Well, this was the piece that I wrote. I hope somebody can pass this along to others, and with all sincerity and all true emotions, reach out to those who are trying to find an outlet or some way of figuring out their situation, and I'm sure that we can point them in the right direction, give them the support and the attention that they need, and help them get through this, whatever it is they may be going through. Thank you, and I thank the Austin Public Library for the opportunity to share this with the listeners out there.
Hello, I'm Sketch. I write for the Challenger, and the article I'm reading today is Helping the Homeless. First, yes, I'm temporarily disadvantaged, not homeless. My old lady and our now 2 dogs. We recently acquired a second dog named Comet for Kim, which we got for the price of 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Now, I know what a lot of you are saying right now, so please refer to, I believe it's a September issue of the Challenger paper, and read my article on the homeless having pets. Though homeless, but both employed here, we are fully capable of providing the love, attention, and food for our 2 kids. We are simply having difficulty getting into a more permanent place to live and sleep, which is a minuscule part of the homeless dilemma here in this great city of Austin, Texas. With that being written, I'll get on with the point of this article. Kim and I are 2 older folks. Kim's 54 and I'm 57. We were both equally happy and excited when we started working here at the Challenger Street paper. This can be our step up and into an actual place to call our own, I gleefully kept telling Kim. And I've got, and always do, have a lot to say. I started concentrating on the other temporarily disadvantaged that we met and inquired and listened to the many complaints, curiosities, and points of view told to me. I began checking out articles in that other Austin paper concerning the mayor and the city council's plans to supposedly help the homeless population here. But I see no immediate help being done. The mobile loaves and fishes people have begun operating Community First Village, and I praise them for that. But that wasn't the brainstorm of the mayor and his crew. The mayor's concern is to pretty up the place to attract more tourists. And it seems to me that attracting more tourists translates to running the homeless as far away from the city as possible, not helping the homeless. Everywhere we find a place to sleep, we get run off and threatened with going to jail. The helping the homeless is constantly in future plans limbo. We're being pushed further and further away from the city and away from the resources everyone needs. So Kim and I haven't had a good night's sleep in quite a while because we're worried about being awakened by the APD and told to leave. The best Christmas present would be to start the new year, 2018, with the legally permitted ability for the homeless who are able to live with others in a mature, grown-up, and thiefless manner to have a place to put up our tents in an area instead of being scattered around hiding from the so-called law enforcers. We'd like to be able to leave our things there and go on about our day, finding some sort of work and having our things still there when we come back. We know you people, the not homeless, don't get your money for free. You have to work for it. So do we. Me and Kim don't panhandle, we don't fly a sign asking for a handout, and we don't steal. We're trying to work and earn enough to eat on. We're just 2 older folks trying to better ourselves again. But you gotta have a stable surrounding to do that. We, the homeless, are not asking for the promise of a free house or a micro house. We'd just like a place to call home. Does this grand city, the capital of Texas, really want to help the homeless? How about instead of promising $100,000 to do it, just allow us places to pitch our tents and live as normal as we can, and really become a part of society like they always complain about that we should be doing or become. Have a beautiful day.
Hi. So we have been listening to Challenger Street newspaper writers. This is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, right here on koop.org, Co-op 91.7 FM. And we're going to get back into listening to some more stories that are written by Challenger Street newspaper writers right after we learn about some of the events that are happening at libraries throughout town. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that the Windsor Park branch is going to be closing starting Friday, January 19th, 2018, for a renovation, a complete renovation, and that renovation is going to take about 6 months. So we just want to let people know, try to find another branch in the area. There are lots of other branches. There's information about the Windsor Park branch renovations online at library.austintexas.gov. There's going to be a renovation presentation at the Windsor Park Neighborhood Association this Saturday, January 13th at 10 a.m., and that will take place at the Memorial United Methodist Church, which is right down the street. It's at 6100 Berkman Drive. And again, that's regarding the Windsor Park renovations that will go into effect Friday, January 19th is when the library, that branch will close. So now we're going to hear about some of the exciting events that are happening at libraries all over town, and then we'll have some brief announcements, and we'll get back to the Challenger Street writers right after that. Thanks for listening.
My name is Blair Parsons, and I'm a librarian at the Central Library. Each week I highlight a few programs for adults that are happening around the Austin Public Library. Our full list of programs may be found on the library's events calendar. Adult Story Hour returns to the Twin Oaks Branch Library Thursday, January 11th. January's Story Hour theme is New Beginnings. Participants have 5 minutes to tell a tale, whether it be truth, fiction, funny, or serious. Adult Story Hour begins at 7 o'clock Thursday evening, January 11th, at the Twin Oaks Branch Library. The Spicewood Springs Branch Library's Afternoon Book Club's next meeting is Tuesday, January 16th at 1:30. January's selected book is Noah Hawley's Before the Fall. Hawley's novel tells the story of two unlikely plane crash survivors. The Afternoon Book Club meets the third Tuesday of each month at 1:30 at the Spicewood Springs Branch Library.
Hey there, Austin. Teen Program Specialist Michael Harley from the Downtown Central Library here. Ever wonder what would happen if a group of beauty queens ended up stranded on a desert island? Me neither. But I feel like that's one of those questions I never knew I wanted answered until I heard about Beauty Queens, a new book by best-selling author of The Diviners, Liba Bray. A humorous premise with over-the-top action and humor is unexpectedly peppered with moments of thought and sincerity in this unusual comedy. And teens have the chance to chat about every moment at Teen Book Club, happening Thursday, January 11th at 6:30 p.m. at the Spicewood Springs branch. More details for these and additional programs can be found at library.austintexas.gov/events.
This is Ann Minner, Managing Librarian at the Old Quarry Branch. I get to highlight some recurring Austin Public Library events happening for children this season. The Austin Public Library Youth Services team is committed to supporting children's love of reading and enhancing their learning opportunities. We are proud to present our Sensory Storytime, which is geared toward children with special needs, their families, and friends. The program features interactive books, singing, and music, and incorporates some sensory activities like movement and bubbles. We follow a visual schedule of the activities because knowing what is happening next can be comforting. Children of all ages and abilities are welcome at Sensory Storytimes on Wednesdays at 11:15 a.m. at the Yarborough branch, on Thursdays at 11 a.m. at the Spicewood Springs branch, and Thursdays at 11:15 a.m. at the Ruiz branch. Details about the Storytime schedule that continues through February are at library.austintexas.gov/storytimes.
Capital Metro invites the public to hear about the proposed transformation of the Austin Region's bus system. For more information, you may visit capmetro.org/June 2018.
You're listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM and koop.org. Radio for people, not for profit.
I'm Valerie, the director-editor of the Challenger Street newspaper, to empower people in need with economic opportunity and have their viewpoints heard. This paper uplifts and gives information to our most underrepresented people. It encourages responsibility and freedoms necessary to enhance our everyday life. The people we serve have a wealth of information to share with society. The paper contributes, informs, and connects diverse people from all walks of life. The challenge is to end poverty. The Challenger Laptop Program by JRC helps get computers into the hands of our writers, distributors, and participating members to help inspire, educate, and empower. Some of the things we're looking for: laptops, netbooks, Chromebooks, tablets, USB flash drives, Windows 7 or greater install disks. We have a preference for, but are not limited to, computers that are 10 years old or newer, so as to keep up with current software and operating systems. Donations or questions can be directed to challengerNewspaper@yahoo.com.
My name is Pirate Joe, according to the Challenger newspaper. I've written for this paper for about 2.5 years, and the title of this article, which is out in the November issue of the Challenger Street newspaper, is called An Educated Opinion. And it is kind of a snarky title, I'm not going to lie. I'm not trying to be too pretentious about it, but the subject matter has to do with the professor that challenged a paradigm I had. So I'm trying to boast at least a little bit of learning.
Okay, so here we go. I'm Valerie Romness, and I'm the director-editor, and I'm going to read Joe's article. It's called An Experienced Opinion. I did not end up homeless. I chose this. I sought it out. The faux homeless condition will exist until more people do this. 1,000 years ago, in a former life at Austin Community College's Rio Grande campus, I had a professor named Joe Hoppy. One of the professor review websites I had used had a succinct statement that summed up any course the man instructed. Not for the faint of heart. He was, maybe still is, a member of the old guard of higher education, a critical thinker. Like a bloodhound, he honed in on any argument or statement that began with, "I believe." One of my favorite Hoppy retorts was, "What concerns me is what you understand. Do you know where this belief comes from?" An educated opinion is no substitute for an account of experience. This was something I went on about in his class. One day, the subject of homelessness came up, and this was the seed that began my travels. "Have you been homeless before?" is where Hoppy led the debate. After high school, I lived out of my car and couch surfed a bit before the military, I responded. That doesn't quite count. What I meant to specifically ask is, have you gone for long periods of time without money, the ability to make it, or a social network to offer your support? No, sir, I have not. Do you think you ever will be in this situation? Maybe, but I doubt it. Why not? I'm a capable man. I make friends easily. I have a work ethic. I am adaptable and resourceful, even without a social network. Hoppy smiled. So what you're saying is that you have no account of experience behind your educated opinion. I was not merely stunned, I was altered by this statement. I had a self-aware moment of just how ignorant I was to the deep primal fear I had of this condition. Further, I understood to my bones that if I did not rectify this before something beyond my control snatched the trimmings of my life away, I would compromise every ethic I hold allegiance to and sacrifice my morality on the altar of fear to prevent this. You know what fear makes us all do. It took me a long time to look this moment of clarity full on again, about 1.5 years. I can jump into danger with a grin, but I couldn't look this homeless thing in the face. It was a slow nagging. Not that I didn't understand homelessness, but that I had to admit to myself the kind of absolute monster it would turn me into if I didn't meet it on the field first. I have done many things that people call brave and tough. Usually I wasn't paying attention enough to be scared. Giving everything up was not one of these bold things. I simply let everything in my life slowly lapse by design. I even told all my friends that I was couch surfing with after my lease expired that they would most likely have to throw me out. So I couch surfed with those of my friends who had enough backbone to do this. It was January 2013 when I finally hit the street. It was the best, toughest, and most educational experience of my life to date. You can really see through the emperor's clothes on the street if your mind isn't numbed by desperate fear or an addiction. Usually, sometimes those help to see too. I don't recommend it though. One of my accounts of experience of the streets and of homelessness is this. We know little else in first world countries but how to substitute survival knowledge with a trip to the store. It is a condition of a society that does not educate its people of how to readily live off the land, and those accustomed to dependency from birth are totally unaware of it until they fall out of the system. And even then, few seem to be aware of this. If you have read this far, there might be one more person who sees through the emperor's clothes.
There's a professor at ACC, and he flirts around between campuses. When I met him is when I attended a few of his classes. We always had, and I was introduced to him by another professor, by the way. I was like shanghaied by this man. That professor's name is John Herndon. He's also an English professor. And John Herndon does a poetry night at ACC, and I've read there several times. They've both let me drag people off the street to read their poetry at that poetry night, too. So you have all these academic sweater vests going, these street people that, like, totally don't match my latte, but I'd like to hear what they've written. It's really kind of a magic moment. Anyway, so Hoppy and I had the productive side of an argumentative basis, you know, where each one is practicing who they are and gaining insight instead of competing who's right and who's wrong. We both, and him to a large degree, probably challenge. I'm not really going to even keep score. I know it was, you know, the shared experience of it. The professor, I was the student, but I didn't. He had a life of correcting other people's, you know, papers, and he had a wonderful opinion and he was a great person to calibrate how you used your mind. However, I used to pick on him because he lived mostly out of books, and he'd talk about all these adventures that some of these writers have, and I was like, you've never really done that, have you?
So you called him out.
Well, but he rose to every single occasion. He never acted like I caught his hand in a cookie jar. It just seemed to him like a more missed opportunity of something to write about. You know, he's like, you know, if I can get around to it, though. He was never intimidated about it at all. He still rose to the occasion. He just came via a route of flying a desk to it. But he cornered me. He really cornered me one day after class when this subject matter came up. And I had a lot of experience in a lot of different places in life, but I came through the route myself by never really knowing poverty. I crashed with friends who didn't make a living, but I always had a line into some sphere of education, some realm of the government, some parts of the military, because I have no criminal history to speak of and usually don't burn bridges down. I more came to the street via and through life more of a backpacking, you know, even though I'd never been homeless, I myself, because of a lifestyle like that, had never really had a home either. It was a moment where I think he noticed somehow, because he studied all his students as carefully as me, by the way. There was no actual, on a note of being a preferred student and us chatting this long was a courtesy this man showed to every person in his class he could, too, by the way. I was no by any means favored pupil or anything. He's the anvil of logic for everybody's opinion, regardless of who you are. So something about him, I'm willing to bet, he noticed that I had and I've never had any misgivings towards poverty or homeless folks if I've ever had a few spare dollars, yeah, man, go get yourself something to drink, go get yourself something to eat. But I always did identify myself as a separate population that would be never in that condition. And unless it hits a rude chord in you, or you have a classist vein in you, you can still dismiss an entire population even though you don't mean them any ill will. Just like, well, I am not like that. You and I share nothing in common. I did subscribe a little bit to that, well, you've just made a lot of bad decisions to get here, and all you got to do is just pull yourself up, make a few decisions, and here's enough money to get a sandwich while you're doing that, man. But because I dismissed them as an entire population, I think Hoppy caught to that. Because he didn't ask me what it would be like to go around backpacking or what it would be like to live off the land at some Indian reservation. He brought up that specific paradigm and a few more questions. That conversation was longer than just that, of what it would be like to experience life as this judged thing instead of a number of different ways you can interpret it. And I did kind of freak out when I noticed, holy crap, and where it started was, what I didn't write down was, one of my initial responses was very seriously, I said, I will never allow that to happen to me.
As I was reading this in preparation of putting it in the paper as the editor, it strikes me that you can't judge all homeless people the same, that there's different personalities in the world, and that just because somebody doesn't have money or doesn't mean they're not resourceful.
Well, it does, because it's a backward paradigm. If the people who are being wanderers, let's just say, got together and decided for this diverse group, most of us would decide to be called homeless, then everybody would judge them as a diverse group. But homelessness is a label that has been cooked up and fed through people, through media and print, that is a thing. Homelessness is an institutionalized idea as a consumable piece of media. We have all been taught to view other people that have had no real say, because the conditions of that situation of living doesn't really give you time to have a regular life enough to write stuff down or an opportunity to publish a viewpoint. Homelessness is a term of dismissal. And most people who use the term aren't, I wasn't aware of it initially. I had to learn this from the inside out. There is no cohesive thing, there is no understandable phrase that comes out of homeless other than, you were taught to dismiss people with this word, weren't you? Because the second you get to know any homeless person in the street, you might call them homeless, but that person becomes Brad or Sarah, and they're just out of their job, and they're from New York, or they're from Nevada. And if somebody says, but are they homeless? Most people who know Brad or Sarah or something like, yeah, but you don't understand. I mean, there's reasons for that. Once that phrase, there's reasons for that, come up, people stop being homeless, because in the conversation that they're not even at. Right then, that's the curve that gets everybody to relate to them as a person. I'm telling you, homelessness is a tool that we have been taught to, as a society, like a conspiracy theorist psyop game, and it doesn't take anybody to misplan that. Just a piece of fiction, an idea like a fashion gets going in the subconscious of society, we all begin to do that. There doesn't have to be a screaming madman saying, I'm gonna fool everybody for the culture. We're dumb enough to do this on ourselves, you know? I mean, we can be this stupid all on our own, and that's kind of why I'm trying to cross a line here, is saying that there's no one way to really end up in this situation. So it can't be a universal, one word describes this entire myriad of situations that can line you into this condition.
These are the voices of our writers reading their own work. I hope you enjoyed our sampler of voices. The articles are online at challengernewspaper.org. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Special thanks to our producer, DJ Harris, and to the musicians who composed and performed our original theme song, Andrew Noble on violin, Kirk Duvall on guitar, and Mike Wheat on percussion. And thanks to you, our listeners. Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, airs Wednesday afternoons at 2:30 on Co-op 91.7 FM and koop.org. If you catch us mid-show, full episodes and other details can be found at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.